of Dr. Ophelia Sinclair's office on the 23rd floor, creating a rhythmic percussion that filled the silence. She glanced at the antique clock on her mahogany desk. 8:17 p.m. Her last appointment of the day was running late, 17 minutes late to be precise. Ophelia didn't mind tardiness as much as some of her colleagues. In her 7 years as a licensed therapist specializing in trauma and high-functioning anxiety, she'd learned that late arrivals often signaled deeper issues: avoidance, fear, or sometimes simply the chaos of a life spiraling out of control. Her office was designed to be a sanctuary: soft gray walls, carefully selected abstract art, shelves lined with books on psychology and philosophy. A leather couch faced her chair at an angle that felt conversational rather than clinical. Everything was intentional, meant to create safety. The intercom on her desk buzzed. "Dr. Sinclair?" Her receptionist Melissa's voice sounded slightly breathless. "Your 8 o'clock is here. Should I send him in?" Ophelia straightened her charcoal blazer and smoothed her auburn hair, which she wore in a professional low bun. "Yes, please. Thank you, Melissa." She stood, taking a moment to center herself. This was a new patient, Dante Carver, according to the brief intake form he'd submitted online. 34 years old, CEO of some international consulting firm, requesting therapy for stress management and insomnia. The standard presenting issues of high-powered executives. When Ophelia opened her office door, her breath caught for just a fraction of a second. Dante Carver was nothing like she'd expected. Tall, easily 6'2", with a frame that suggested he spent time doing more than sitting behind a desk. He wore an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Dark hair, almost black, swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. Sharp jawline, high cheekbones, a mouth that looked like it rarely smiled. But it was his eyes that truly arrested her. Deep emerald green, intense and penetrating, with an intelligence that seemed to catalog everything about her in a single glance. "Dr. Sinclair." His voice was deep, smooth, with the faintest trace of an accent she couldn't quite place. European, perhaps. "I apologize for my tardiness. An unexpected business call." He extended his hand. Ophelia shook it professionally, noting the firmness of his grip, the warmth of his skin, the way his fingers lingered just a moment longer than strictly necessary. "No apology needed, Mr. Carver. Please come in." He moved into her office with a confidence that bordered on ownership, his eyes scanning the space with what seemed like practiced assessment. When his gaze landed on a painting, a Kandinsky reproduction, he paused. Interest therapists opt for calming seascapes or generic landscapes. Kandinsky is chaotic, emotional. Ophelia was impressed despite herself. Most of her clients didn't even notice the art. "I find that chaos can be honest, sometimes more honest than artificial calm." Dante's lips curved into the smallest smile. "Fascinating philosophy, Doctor." He settled onto her couch with deliberate grace, crossing one leg over the other. Ophelia took her seat across from him, leaving her notepad on the side table. She preferred to maintain eye contact during first sessions. "So, Dante, may I call you Dante?" "Please do. Mr. Carver makes me feel like my father." A shadow crossed his face when he said this, quick but noticeable. "Dante, then. What brings you to therapy today?" He was quiet for a long moment, those green eyes studying her with an intensity that made her feel both seen and somehow vulnerable. "Insomnia, as I mentioned in the intake form. I haven't slept properly in months, maybe longer." "When you say properly, what does that mean for you?" More than 2 or 3 hours a night, and even those hours are. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Restless, full of dreams I'd rather not have. Nightmares? Not exactly. More like memories that refuse to stay buried. Ophelia leaned forward slightly. Can you tell me about these memories? Dante's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Perhaps not in the first session, Doctor. I prefer to know someone before I bleed for them. The phrasing was unusual, poetic almost. That's completely understandable. Therapy is built on trust, and trust takes time. Why don't we start with something easier? Tell me about your work. I run a consulting firm, Carver International. We advise corporations on strategic restructuring, international expansion, risk management. It's demanding, high stress. And you travel frequently? Constantly. Last month alone, I was in Dubai, Singapore, and Prague. That kind of schedule would cause insomnia for anyone. Have you considered that your sleep issues might be related to jet lag and overwork? Dante smiled, but there was something sad in it. I wish it were that simple, Dr. Sinclair. But no. The insomnia started long before the travel became this intense. The work is actually. He paused. A distraction. From other things? What kind of things? His eyes locked onto hers. The kind that we'll discuss when you've earned my trust. Most therapists would find this resistance frustrating, but Ophelia had learned that the most damaged patients often needed to test boundaries to see if you'd push too hard too fast. Fair enough. Let's talk about what you hope to gain from therapy. I want to sleep. I want to stop the dreams. I want to feel. He searched for the word. Present. In my own life. Lately, I feel like I'm watching myself from outside, going through motions. Dissociation, Ophelia said gently. It's a common response to chronic stress or unprocessed trauma. Trauma. Dante repeated the word as if tasting it. An interesting word. So clinical. So sanitized. What word would you use? Scars. He said it without hesitation. Trauma sounds temporary. Scars are permanent. Ophelia felt a chill run down her spine. There was something in the way he said it, a weight that suggested he was speaking from profound experience. Not all scars are permanent, Dante. Some can heal with time and proper care. You believe that? I have to. Otherwise, what would be the point of my work? For the first time, his smile seemed genuine. Optimism, how refreshing. They spent the next 30 minutes discussing his daily routines, his stress management techniques, or lack thereof, and his support system. Dante was forthcoming about some things. His lack of close friendships, his tendency to work 16-hour days, his habit of using scotch to try to sleep. But there were gaps. Questions he deflected with charm or wit. Ophelia noticed every single one, filing them away mentally. When their time was up, Dante stood, buttoning his suit jacket. Same time next week? Ophelia asked. Actually, he pulled out his phone, checking his calendar. Would it be possible to increase the frequency? Twice a week, perhaps? I find that when I commit to something, I prefer to be thorough. Ophelia hesitated. Twice weekly sessions with a new patient was unusual, especially one who was clearly holding back significant information. But something in his request seemed genuine, desperate even, beneath the polished exterior. I can do Tuesday and Thursday evenings at 8. Perfect. He extended his hand again. This time, when Ophelia shook it, she noticed something she'd missed before. Scars. Faint white lines across his knuckles, the kind that came from impact against hard surfaces. Fighting, perhaps. or something worse? Before she could analyze it further, Dante released her hand and headed for the door. But at the threshold, he turned back. Dr. Sinclair? Yes? Thank you for not pushing, for understanding that some doors need to be opened slowly. That's what I'm here for. No, he said quietly. Most therapists push, prod, demand vulnerability as if it's owed to them. You're patient. It's a rare quality. And then he was gone, leaving only the faint scent of expensive cologne and something else. Something darker, like smoke and secrets. Ophelia stood in her empty office for a long moment, her heart beating faster than it should. She'd had thousands of patients over the years, many of them complex, damaged, carrying heavy burdens. But something about Dante Carver felt different, dangerous maybe, or maybe just lost in a way that called to something in her own carefully controlled professional exterior. She walked to her desk and opened her personal journal, the one she kept separate from patient files. New patient, Dante Carver. Intelligent, guarded, clearly traumatized though source. Unknown. High functioning but dissociative. Red flags, evasiveness about past, scars on hands, intensity that feels almost predatory? No, that's not the right word. Magnetic. Proceed with caution. Maintain boundaries. But even as she wrote the words, Ophelia knew something had already shifted. Dante Carver had walked into her carefully ordered world and disturbed something. Like a stone thrown into still water, creating ripples that would spread far beyond this first session. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that Dante's arrival in her life was no accident, that every word he'd spoken was calculated, that the man sitting on her couch, discussing insomnia and stress, commanded an empire built on violence and blood, that Dante Carver was many things: CEO, strategist, survivor, but above all, he was a man who always got what he wanted, and what he wanted more than anything was her. Chapter 2. Gradual Descent. Ophelia couldn't stop thinking about Dante Carver. It was unprofessional, inappropriate, and completely unlike her. In 7 years of practice, she had maintained impeccable boundaries. She'd never developed feelings for a patient, never obsessed over a session, never let anyone's presence linger in her mind long after they'd left her office. Yet here she was, 3 days after their first meeting, replaying their conversation while waiting for her morning coffee at her favorite cafe. Dr. Sinclair? She jumped slightly at the sound of her name, turning to find Dante himself standing behind her in line, looking impossibly perfect in a navy suit and crisp white shirt, no tie. Dante. She hoped her voice sounded more composed than she felt. What a coincidence. His smile was slow, knowing. Is it? This is 2 blocks from your office. I assumed it might be where you get your morning caffeine fix. You've been observing my routine? The question came out sharper than intended. Observing sounds so sinister. He stepped closer as the line moved forward. I prefer to think of it as paying attention. You mentioned during our session that you have a standing 9 a.m. appointment on Mondays. This cafe is the closest quality coffee shop. It's simply logical deduction. Ophelia didn't know whether to be flattered or disturbed. That's very thorough. I'm a thorough person, Dr. Sinclair. When something interests me, I learn everything about it. The barista called for her order. Ophelia stepped forward, hyper-aware of Dante's presence behind her. Large cappuccino with an extra shot, she told the barista. Make that 2, Dante added, pulling out his wallet before Ophelia could react. Please, allow me. That's not necessary. Perhaps not, but I'd like to. Consider it a thank you for taking me on such short notice last week. The barista was already processing the payment. Ophelia felt off balance, like the conversation was moving in directions she couldn't predict or control. Thank you, she said finally, because refusing seemed churlish. They moved to the pickup counter. Dante leaned against it with casual elegance, those green eyes studying her with unnerving focus. You look tired, Dr. Sinclair. Are you sleeping well? The irony made her laugh softly. I'm supposed to be asking you that question. We're not in session. Here, we're just two people getting coffee. He paused. Unless you have a rule against casual interaction with patients outside the office? Ophelia did have such a rule, a firm one, but somehow she found herself saying, casual interaction is fine, as long as we maintain appropriate boundaries. Of course, boundaries. The way he said it suggested he found the concept amusing. Though I have to ask, Dr. Sinclair, where exactly is the line? Coffee is acceptable, but what about lunch? Dinner? A late-night conversation about philosophy and the nature of human darkness. The last one definitely crosses the line, Ophelia said, but she was smiling despite herself. Noted. I'll save my philosophical musings for our sessions. He collected their coffees as the barista called their names, handing one to Ophelia. Though I have to say, that seems a shame. I have the feeling you'd have fascinating perspectives on darkness. Why would you think that? Your choice of art, your profession, the way you talk about chaos being honest. He took a sip of his coffee, never breaking eye contact. People who understand darkness usually carry some of their own. The observation was too accurate. Ophelia felt exposed, as if Dante could see through the professional exterior she'd spent years constructing. Everyone has darkness, Dante. It's what we do with it that matters. Wise words, Doctor. He glanced at his watch. A Patek Philippe, Ophelia noticed, worth more than her car. I should go. Board meeting in an hour. But I'll see you tomorrow evening, 8 o'clock. I'll be on time, I promise. He walked away, and Ophelia watched him go, noting the way other people in the cafe tracked his movement. He commanded attention without seeming to try. Only when he was gone did she realize her hands were shaking slightly. This was dangerous. Whatever this was, this awareness, this pull, it violated every principle she held sacred. She pulled out her phone and texted her best friend and former colleague, Dr. Maya Chen. I need to talk. Lunch today? Maya's response was immediate. Oh, that sounds serious. Noon at Marcello's? Perfect. 12 hours later, Ophelia sat across from Maya in their favorite Italian restaurant, nursing a glass of Pinot Grigio and trying to articulate the problem. So, let me get this straight, Maya said, twirling pasta around her fork. Gorgeous, mysterious new patient, clearly dealing with some serious trauma. And you're attracted to him? I didn't say attracted. You didn't have to. I've known you for 10 years, Ophelia. You're practically glowing in a this is wildly inappropriate, but I can't help myself kind of way. Ophelia groaned, dropping her head into her hands. I'm a terrible therapist. You're a human therapist. There's a difference. Maya's expression softened. Look, attraction happens. Countertransference is real. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I maintain professional boundaries. I focus on his treatment, and I ignore these feelings. And if that doesn't work, then I refer him to someone else. Maya studied her for a long moment. Or And hear me out. You could acknowledge that maybe this is different. That maybe he's different. Maya, I'm not saying act on it. I'm just saying don't torture yourself over having natural human reactions to an attractive man who clearly has some kind of connection with you. He's my patient. For now. Patients don't stay patients forever. Ophelia shook her head. That's not how this works. You know the ethics rules as well as I do. Ethics rules that were written by people who'd never met someone who made them feel alive for the first time in years? The words hit too close to home. Ophelia had been going through the motions of her life for so long. Work, home, occasional dates that never went anywhere, the same routine day after day. Dante's arrival had disrupted all of that. I can't, she said finally. I won't. Maya reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Okay. But promise me something? What? If you do decide to transfer him to another therapist, make sure it's because it's truly best for his treatment, not because you're running from your own feelings. That night, Ophelia tried to prepare for Dante's Tuesday session. She reviewed his intake form, refreshed her understanding of trauma-informed therapy techniques, reminded herself of every boundary she needed to maintain. None of it prepared her for the moment he walked into her office. He looked different tonight. More relaxed, maybe. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, revealing muscular forearms. There was a tension in him, though, barely visible beneath the surface. Good evening, Dr. Sinclair. Dante, please, sit. He took his usual spot on the couch, but tonight he seemed restless. His leg bounced slightly, a nervous habit she hadn't seen before. How have you been sleeping? Ophelia asked, easing into the session. Poorly. The same dreams. Do you want to talk about them? Dante was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant. Then, surprisingly, he nodded. I dream about my father. Ophelia remembered the shadow that had crossed his face during their first session when he had mentioned his father. Tell me about him. He was complicated, brilliant in his way. He built an empire from nothing, taught me everything about business, about strategy, about reading people. Dante's jaw tightened. But he was also cruel, demanding. Nothing was ever good enough. That must have been difficult to grow up with. Difficult. Dante laughed without humor. It was survival. Every day was a test. Every mistake was punished. He believed that weakness was the cardinal sin, that emotion was a liability. And you internalized those beliefs. I had to. The alternative was... He stopped himself. Unacceptable. Ophelia leaned forward slightly. Dante, what did your father do when you showed emotion? When you were weak? By his standards? The silence that followed was heavy. Dante's hands, resting on his knees, slowly curled into fists. He corrected me. The way he said it, the careful neutrality of the phrase, told Ophelia everything. He hurt you. He taught me. Dante's voice was hard now, defensive. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like abuse. Dante's eyes snapped to hers, blazing with something dangerous. You don't know anything about my life, Dr. Sinclair, about the world I grew up in. Sometimes pain is the only teacher that gets through. And sometimes, Ophelia said gently, pain just creates more pain. A cycle that's incredibly difficult to break. Something in Dante's expression cracked. Just for a moment, she saw through the polished exterior to the wounded man beneath. I don't want to be like him, he said quietly. That's what the dreams are about. I see myself making his choices, using his methods, becoming the thing I most despise. The fact that you're aware of that pattern, that you're actively fighting against it, that's significant, Dante. It means you're not doomed to repeat his mistakes. You sound so certain. Because I am. Change is possible. Healing is possible. But only if you are willing to face the pain honestly instead of running from it. Dante stood suddenly, walking to the windows. The rain had started again, drops sliding down the glass like tears. What if the pain is too much? What if looking at it directly breaks me? Ophelia rose and moved closer, not too close, maintaining professional distance but close enough that he could feel her presence. Then you break, and then you rebuild, stronger than before. That's how growth works, Dante. We have to break open the old structures to create space for new ones. He turned to face her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. Is that what you did, Dr. Sinclair? Broke and rebuilt? The question was too personal. She should deflect, redirect back to him. Instead, she found herself answering. Yes. When I was 25, I lost both my parents in a car accident. For a year, I could barely function. I had to dismantle everything I thought I knew about life, about safety, about control. And then slowly, piece by piece, I rebuilt myself into someone who could help others navigate their own darkness. I'm sorry, Dante said softly, for your loss. Thank you. But I'm telling you this because I want you to know. I understand what it's like to carry scars. Different circumstances, perhaps, but the weight is the same. They stood there in the quiet office, rain and shared pain creating a fragile intimacy. Then Dante did something unexpected. He reached out and gently touched her hand. Just his fingers against hers, the briefest contact. Thank you, he said, for your honesty, for seeing me. Ophelia knew she should step back, should reestablish boundaries, should remind him that physical contact was inappropriate. But she didn't move. And in that moment, something shifted between them. An acknowledgement of connection that went beyond therapist and patient. Something dangerous. Something inevitable. When Dante finally left that night, Ophelia stood in her empty office and knew with absolute certainty that she was in trouble. Because Dante Carver wasn't just a patient, he was becoming someone she cared about. Someone who made her feel things she had no business feeling. What she still didn't know, what she was so far from discovering, was that every revelation he'd shared tonight was calculated. That his vulnerability was a weapon as sharp as any blade. That the man standing in her office, sharing his pain, commanded an empire built on violence and fear. That Dante Carver was many things: CEO, criminal, killer. But above all, he was a man who knew exactly how to make someone fall for him. And Ophelia, with all her education and insight and professional training, was falling. Fast. Chapter 3. Dangerous Questions. 3 weeks into their therapeutic relationship, Ophelia noticed something strange. She'd been treating patients for 7 years. She understood the rhythms of therapy, the gradual building of trust, the slow peeling back of layers, the careful navigation of trauma. But with Dante, everything felt different, too intense, too fast, too consuming. He arrived for every session exactly on time now, sometimes with coffee for both of them from her favorite cafe, sometimes with small gifts, a book on Kandinsky when she'd mentioned loving the artist, a rare tea from Singapore after he'd returned from a business trip. I saw this and thought of you, he'd say with that slight smile. No obligation to accept, but I wanted you to have it. Ophelia knew she should refuse. Gifts from patients created ethical complications. But every time, she found herself accepting, because they were thoughtful, because they showed he was paying attention, because, and this was the dangerous part, they made her feel special in a way she hadn't felt in years. It was late November now, and the city had turned cold. Ophelia sat in her office before Dante's Thursday session, reviewing notes from their previous meetings. The progress was remarkable. In just a few weeks, Dante had opened up about his childhood, his complex relationship with his late father, his struggles with emotional regulation and intimacy. He was intelligent, insightful, willing to do the difficult work of self-examination. He was, on paper, an ideal patient. So why did something feel off? The question nagged at her as she heard the elevator ding, signaling his arrival. When he walked in, Ophelia's breath caught for a moment, an involuntary reaction she'd learned to suppress but never quite eliminated. Tonight, Dante wore all black. Black suit, black shirt, no tie. It should have looked stark, maybe even threatening. Instead, he looked devastating. "Dr. Sinclair." His voice was warm, familiar now. "You look troubled." "I'm fine. Please, sit." But Dante didn't immediately comply. He stood in front of her desk, studying her with that penetrating gaze. "You're lying. I've learned to read you over these past weeks. When you're fine, you smile. A small, professional smile, but genuine. Right now, you're not smiling. You're worried about something." Ophelia felt exposed. "This session is about you, Dante. Not me." "Is it?" He finally moved to the couch, but his eyes never left hers. "Because I've noticed that the best sessions we have are when we're honest with each other. Not just me spilling my trauma while you sit there analyzing." "That's the nature of therapy." "The nature of therapy," Dante interrupted gently, "is a relationship. And relationships require reciprocity, even if it's not perfectly balanced." He wasn't wrong. Ophelia had been trained in relational therapy models that emphasized authentic connection. But there were limits, lines that shouldn't be crossed. "What do you want from me, Dante?" The question came out more raw than she had intended. His expression shifted, something dangerous and vulnerable flickering across his features. "Honestly, I want you to trust me the way I'm learning to trust you. I want to know who you are. Not just Dr. Sinclair the therapist, but Ophelia, the woman who lost her parents young and rebuilt herself, who chooses chaos in her art because she understands that life isn't neat or controlled, who drinks cappuccinos with extra shots because regular coffee isn't strong enough to face her demanding day." Ophelia's heart was racing. "That's not appropriate." "Why not?" Dante leaned forward, his intensity filling the space between them. "Because I'm your patient, because there are rules written by people who've never felt what we're feeling right now." "What are we feeling right now?" The question hung in the air, dangerous and electric. Dante stood, and Ophelia's breath hitched as he moved closer to her chair. Not inappropriately close, but close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody with notes of bergamot. "You tell me, Ophelia, because I know what I feel when I'm with you. Safe, seen, like I can finally breathe after holding my breath for 34 years. And I hope, that maybe you feel something too." Ophelia's professional instincts screamed at her to shut this down, to re-establish boundaries, to remind Dante that their relationship was strictly therapeutic. Instead, she found herself asking, "What do you do, Dante? Really?" The question seemed to come from nowhere, But suddenly Ophelia needed to know, because something about his story never quite added up. The expensive gifts, the constant international travel, the way he spoke about strategy and risk, with a darkness that went beyond normal business consulting. Dante's expression closed off instantly. I told you, I run a consulting firm. I know what you told me. I'm asking what you're not telling me. They stared at each other in tense silence. Why do you ask? Dante's voice was carefully neutral now. Because in 3 weeks of sessions you've told me about your childhood trauma, your relationship struggles, your insomnia. But whenever I ask about your actual work, what you do day to day, who your clients are, what kind of consulting you provide, you deflect, change the subject, offer just enough detail to seem transparent while actually revealing nothing. Dante's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Perhaps because my work isn't relevant to why I'm here. Everything is relevant, Dante, especially if your work is causing the stress and insomnia you claim to be suffering from. Claim? His voice turned cold. You think I'm lying? I think you're lying about something. I'm just trying to understand what. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dante walked back to the couch and sat, his posture rigid. You want to know what I really do, Dr. Sinclair? The use of her title instead of her first name felt like a slap. Yes. I solve problems. Very complicated, very sensitive problems that corporations and governments would prefer to handle discreetly. I facilitate negotiations between parties who can't officially negotiate. I manage situations that require someone with a particular skill set and a complete lack of moral squeamishness. Ophelia felt ice forming in her stomach. What kind of situations? Dante smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The kind that exist in the shadows. The kind that people like you, with your ethics and your boundaries and your belief in human goodness, pretend don't exist. You're trying to shock me, to push me away because I got too close to something you don't want examined. Am I? He stood again, moving toward the door. Or am I finally being honest with you, the way you claim to want? You asked what I'm not telling you, Ophelia. The answer is everything. Everything that matters. Everything that would make you see me for what I really am. And what are you? Dante paused with his hand on the door handle, his back to her. Damaged beyond repair. Just like my father. Just like I always feared I'd become. Dante! He turned, and the raw pain in his eyes stole her breath. Do you know what the worst part is? These sessions with you, they make me want to be better. Want to believe that maybe I'm not completely lost. But then I walk out of here and return to my real life, and I remember that some stains are too deep to wash clean. Nothing is beyond healing if you're willing to do the work. You keep saying that, but you don't know what you're talking about. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. You don't know what I've done, the things I've ordered, the lives I've destroyed because it was good for business, or because someone crossed me, or sometimes just because I could. Ophelia felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to discover something that would change everything. Tell me, she said quietly. Tell me the truth. Dante laughed, the sound bitter and broken. And watch you look at me with horror instead of this care I see in your eyes right now? No, I'd rather keep the lie a little longer. He opened the door. Dante, please, don't leave like this. Sit down. Let's talk through. Good night, Dr. Sinclair. Thank you for the session. And he was gone. Ophelia sat frozen in her chair for a long moment, her mind racing. Everything Dante had just said, was it true? Or was it the traumatized rambling of someone dissociating, creating a dark fantasy to match the darkness he felt inside? She'd had patients before with delusions, with distorted self-perceptions born from abuse and trauma. But something in Dante's voice had sounded too real, too specific. Ophelia pulled out her laptop and did something she'd never done with a patient before. She searched for Dante Carver. The results were immediate. Dozens of articles from business publications, Forbes, Bloomberg, The Economist. CEO of Carver International, one of the most successful consulting firms specializing in crisis management and strategic negotiations. Photos of him at charity galas, speaking at business conferences, shaking hands with politicians and CEOs. Everything looked legitimate, impressive even. But then Ophelia dug deeper, searched beyond the first page of results, found smaller publications, international news sources, investigative journalism pieces. And there, buried on page 7 of the search results, she found an article from a European investigative journal. The headline made her blood run cold. The Fixer: How Dante Carver Built an Empire on the Edge of Legality. With shaking hands, Ophelia clicked the link. The article detailed allegations, unproven but persistent, that Carver International was a front for much darker operations. Money laundering, facilitating arms deals, negotiating with criminal organizations on behalf of corporate clients who wanted plausible deniability. No charges had ever been filed, no evidence concrete enough to prosecute. But the pattern was there. A shadow empire built on violence and fear, hidden behind the veneer of legitimate business. Ophelia closed her laptop, her hands trembling. This couldn't be real. Dante was her patient, a wounded man dealing with childhood trauma and insomnia, not a criminal, not someone who'd destroyed lives because he could. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I'm sorry for how I left. You deserve better than my damage. I won't be coming to our next session, or any session after. You were right to push, and I was right to leave before you could see too much. Thank you for trying to save me, but some people are beyond saving. D. Ophelia stared at the message, her heart pounding. Every professional instinct told her to accept this, to let him go, to refer him to another therapist and forget this entire complicated situation. But she couldn't. Because somewhere in the past 3 weeks, she'd stopped seeing Dante Carver as just a patient. He'd become someone she cared about, someone she was falling for, despite every rule she'd ever learned about boundaries and ethics. And now she had to decide, was she brave enough to follow him into the shadows he'd hinted at? Or wise enough to walk away before she lost herself completely? Ophelia looked at her reflection in the darkened window. The competent therapist, the professional woman who'd rebuilt herself after tragedy. That woman knew the right choice. But there was another version of herself emerging. Someone who'd been dormant for years, kept carefully controlled beneath layers of professionalism and caution. Someone who wanted to know the truth no matter how dark. Someone who couldn't let Dante Carver disappear without understanding what he really was. Dangerous or damaged. Criminal or victim. Monster or man. Or perhaps, most frighteningly, all of the above. Before she could talk herself out of it, Ophelia typed a response. Don't run. Not from this. Not from me. Tuesday, 8 p.m. I'll be waiting. And Dante? Whatever you think you are, whatever you've done, you're not beyond saving. You never were. She hit send before fear could stop her. And in that moment, Ophelia Sinclair stepped across a line she could never uncross. Into darkness, into danger, into a truth that would shatter everything she thought she knew about right and wrong, about healing and harm, about love and obsession, and about the beautiful, broken man who was about to consume her completely. Chapter Panim 4: The Truth in Shadows. Tuesday arrived wrapped in a cold November rain that seemed determined to wash the city clean or drown it. Ophelia spent the entire day distracted, her patients receiving only half of her usual attention. She apologized internally to each of them, knowing she was failing in her professional duties. But her mind was consumed by one question: would Dante show up? By 7:45 p.m., she'd convinced herself he wouldn't. That he'd run, disappeared into whatever dark world he inhabited, and she'd never see him again. Then, at exactly 8 o'clock, her office door opened. Dante stood in the doorway, and Ophelia's breath caught at the sight of him. He looked different tonight. Exhausted, for one thing. Dark circles under his eyes, his usually perfect hair slightly disheveled. He wore jeans and a black sweater instead of his typical suit, making him seem more human, more vulnerable, more real. "You came," Ophelia said softly. "You asked me to." Dante stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Though I spent the past 3 days trying to convince myself not to." "What changed your mind?" He was quiet for a long moment, those green eyes searching her face. "Your message. You're not beyond saving. You never were. No one has ever said that to me before, not with such certainty." Ophelia gestured to the couch, but Dante shook his head. "Not tonight. If I'm going to do this, really do this, I need to stand. Need to see your face when the illusion shatters." A chill ran down Ophelia's spine. "What illusion?" "The one where I'm just a stressed CEO with daddy issues." Dante's smile was bitter. "You researched me, didn't you? After I left last week? No point in lying." "Yes." "And what did you find?" "Articles about your company, your success, and—" She hesitated. "One investigative piece suggesting your business isn't entirely legitimate. That piece got the journalist who wrote it killed." Dante said it casually, as if discussing the weather. "Not by me directly, but by people who didn't appreciate him asking questions about the wrong clients." Ophelia felt the floor shift beneath her feet. "You're serious?" "Completely." Dante moved to the windows, looking out at the rain-soaked city. "You want the truth, Ophelia? Here it is. Carver International is real. We do consulting. But that's the surface. Underneath, we facilitate deals that can't happen in daylight. Arms sales to governments that can't officially buy weapons. Money laundering for cartels who need their cash cleaned. Information brokering between intelligence agencies and criminals." "You're telling me you're— what? A criminal?" "I prefer the term facilitator. I don't pull triggers. I don't move drugs. I don't hurt people with my own hands." He turned to face her. "I just make it possible for others to do those things. For a price." Ophelia's mind reeled. This couldn't be real. This man she'd been treating, falling for. He was describing activities that destroyed lives. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you asked. Because I'm tired of lying to the one person who's seen me as human in years. And because—" his voice dropped. "Because I need you to understand what you're getting involved with before this goes any further." "Before what goes any further?" Dante crossed the space between them in 3 long strides. He didn't touch her, but he was close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. You know what I'm talking about. This thing between us. This pull. You feel it too. Don't deny it. Ophelia's heart hammered against her ribs. Every professional instinct screamed at her to shut this down, to establish boundaries, to end this session immediately. Instead, she heard herself whisper, I feel it. Dante's eyes darkened with something intense and hungry. Then you need to decide, right now, if you can live with what I am. Because once we cross this line, there's no going back. You'll be complicit, connected to me, and my world doesn't forgive witnesses. Are you threatening me? I'm protecting you. There's a difference. His hand lifted, hovering near her face but not quite touching. Walk away now, Ophelia. Refer me to another therapist. Forget you ever met me. It's the smart choice, the safe choice. And if I don't want to be smart or safe? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Dante's hand finally made contact, his fingers gently brushing her cheek. The touch sent electricity through her entire body. Then God help us both, he murmured. Because I've wanted you since the moment I walked into this office, and I'm not a man who denies himself what he wants. Ophelia knew she should step back, should remind him that she was his therapist, that this was unethical, that everything about this was wrong. But when his other hand came up to frame her face, when he leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to stop him, she didn't move. Their lips met in a kiss that obliterated every rule Ophelia had ever followed. It started gentle, almost questioning, but within seconds it deepened into something fierce and desperate. Dante's hands slid into her hair, pulling her closer, while Ophelia's fingers gripped his sweater, anchoring herself as the world tilted. He tasted like coffee and something darker, something forbidden. His kiss was demanding but not forceful, taking and giving in equal measure. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ophelia felt like she'd crossed a threshold she'd spent 7 years carefully avoiding. I can't be your therapist anymore, she said, her voice shaky. I know. This is completely unethical. I know. I don't even know if I can trust you, if any of what you've told me is real. Dante's hands were still in her hair, his forehead resting against hers. It's all real, every dark, terrible word. And you should absolutely not trust me. I'm dangerous, Ophelia. I ruin everything I touch. Then why does this feel right? Because sometimes the most dangerous things are the ones that call to something broken inside us. He pulled back enough to look into her eyes. I see you, Ophelia. Not the perfect therapist, not the woman who rebuilt herself after tragedy. I see the part of you that's tired of being safe, that wants to feel alive again, even if it means courting danger. His words cut too close to truth she'd been avoiding. I need time, she said, to process this, to figure out what the hell I'm doing. Take all the time you need. Dante stepped back, and the loss of his warmth felt like a physical ache. But know this, I'm not playing games. Whatever happens between us, whatever you decide, I'm all in. Completely. Obsessively. Probably unhealthily. That should scare me. Does it? Ophelia searched her feelings, expecting fear, finding instead a dark thrill. Not as much as it should. Dante smiled, and for the first time since she'd met him, it reached his eyes. Then maybe we deserve each other after all. After he left, Ophelia stood in her office for a long time, her fingers touching her lips where he'd kissed her. She'd just crossed every professional line she'd sworn never to cross. She'd kissed a man who'd essentially confessed to being a criminal. She should be horrified, ashamed, already planning how to report this breach of ethics. Instead, she felt alive in a way she hadn't in years, and that, more than anything, told her just how much trouble she was in. Chapter 5. Descent into Gray. The next morning, Ophelia did something she'd never done in her entire career. She called in sick. Not because she was physically ill, but because she couldn't face her patients. Couldn't sit in her office where Dante had kissed her and pretend to be the competent, ethical therapist they trusted. Instead, she spent the day in her apartment, trying to make sense of what had happened. She'd kissed Dante Carver. More than kissed. She'd been a willing, eager participant in something that violated every ethical guideline she'd sworn to uphold. And he'd told her he was a criminal. Not metaphorically, literally. Any rational person would go to the police, would report what he'd confessed. But Ophelia found herself doing the opposite. She was researching him more deeply, trying to understand the world he inhabited. She learned about the gray markets that existed between legal and illegal, about facilitators who operated in shadows, making deals that governments and corporations needed but couldn't officially touch. She learned that Dante hadn't lied. This world existed, and he was a significant player in it. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I know you're not sick. You're hiding. Trying to figure out if you've lost your mind. You haven't. You've just finally found it. Dinner tonight? I promise no more revelations. Just food and conversation. Your choice of location. D." Ophelia stared at the message for a full 5 minutes. She should say no, should establish distance, should probably never see Dante Carver again outside of a police interview room. She typed, "Marcello's, 7 p.m. And Dante? I have questions, lots of them." His response was immediate. "I expected nothing less. I'll be there." Marcello's was the Italian restaurant where she'd had lunch with Maya. Neutral territory, public, safe. Except nothing about this felt safe. Ophelia spent 3 hours getting ready, changing outfits 4 times, redoing her makeup. Twice. She finally settled on a deep burgundy dress that was elegant, but not overtly seductive, paired with low heels. She was not dressing up for him, she told herself. She was simply maintaining her professional appearance. The lie felt transparent even to herself. Dante was already at the restaurant when she arrived, seated at a corner booth that offered privacy without complete isolation. He stood when he saw her, and Ophelia noticed he'd dressed down from his usual CEO perfection. Dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that somehow made him look even more dangerous. "You came," he said, a note of genuine relief in his voice. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't." Ophelia slid into the booth across from him. "I spent most of the day trying to convince myself this is insane." "Did you succeed?" "Clearly not, since I'm here." The waiter appeared and they ordered wine for both of them, though Ophelia suspected she'd need something stronger before the night was over. Once they were alone again, Dante leaned back, studying her with those intense green eyes. "Ask your questions. I'll answer honestly. I owe you that much." Ophelia had prepared a mental list. She started with the most important. "Did you really come to therapy for help? Or was it all a manipulation?" Dante was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing patterns on the table. "Both," he said finally. "I do have insomnia. I do have nightmares about becoming my father. Those parts were real, but the way I found you, the timing, that was calculated. Ice formed in Ophelia's stomach. What do you mean? I've been aware of you for about 6 months. I saw you at a charity gala last spring. You were there with that friend of yours, Maya. You stood in the corner most of the night, observing everyone with this quiet intensity. And I thought, here's someone who sees things others miss. You've been watching me for 6 months? Ophelia's voice rose slightly. Not watching. Aware of. There's a difference. Dante leaned forward. I didn't approach you then because you had a boyfriend. Some investment banker looked boring as hell. But 3 months ago, I learned you'd broken up with him. And I thought, maybe now. Maybe now you could what? Seduce your way into free therapy? Seduce my way into your life, Dante corrected. The therapy was a means to an end. I needed a legitimate reason to be near you, to learn about you, to see if the woman I'd been fascinated by from a distance was as remarkable up close. Ophelia felt a mixture of anger and something else, something that felt disturbingly like flattery. So everything was a lie. No, the fascination was real. The attraction was real. The things I told you in those sessions about my father, my trauma, my fear of becoming him, all real. His eyes held hers. I just had ulterior motives for telling you. The waiter returned with their wine and appetizers. Ophelia took a large sip, kneading the liquid. Courage. Why me? Specifically me? Because you understand darkness without being consumed by it. Your parents' deaths, the way you rebuilt yourself. I researched your background thoroughly. You know what loss feels like, what it's like to have your world shattered. And yet, you chose to become someone who helps others through their darkness. He paused. I found that intoxicating. That's not a healthy reason to pursue someone. I never claimed to be healthy, Ophelia. I'm damaged. Probably beyond the repair you believe possible. But I'm honest about it, which is more than most people can say. He had a point, though Ophelia hated to admit it. Tell me about your father. The real story, not the therapeutic version. Dante's expression hardened. My father was Victor Carver. Born Victor Kozlov in Moscow, immigrated to the US when he was 20, with nothing but ambition and a willingness to do things others wouldn't. He built his empire, first in the Russian mob, then legitimizing through business consulting. By the time I was born, he was respected, feared, untouchable. And your mother? An American woman he married for citizenship and kept for appearances. She left when I was 7. I haven't seen her since. That must have been devastating. It was freeing. She was weak, and my father despised weakness. Once she was gone, he could fully focus on molding me into his heir. Dante's hands clenched on the table. From age 7 to 18, I was in training, not for college or a career, for survival in a world where mercy is a liability and trust is a weapon. Ophelia reached across the table, placing her hand over his clenched fist. And the scars on your knuckles? Training. My father believed in hands-on education. His voice was flat, emotionless. He'd bring in professionals to teach me to fight, to shoot, to survive interrogation. The scars are from years of conditioning. That's abuse, Dante. That's preparation, and it worked. When my father died 5 years ago, heart attack, ironically peaceful for a man who'd caused so much violence, I inherited everything. The legitimate businesses, the shadow operations, the network of contacts spanning 30 countries. You could have walked away, gone legitimate, Dante's laugh was bitter. You don't walk away from this world, Ophelia. You're either in or you're dead. And I discovered something troubling when I took over. What? I'm good at it. Better than my father ever was. I have his strategic mind, but I'm not blinded by ego or emotion. I make decisions based on logic, on calculated risk. He met her eyes, and that terrifies me, because it means he won. Despite everything I hated about him, I became exactly what he wanted me to be. The raw pain in his voice made Ophelia's chest ache. This was why she'd become a therapist, to help people navigate exactly this kind of internal conflict. But she wasn't his therapist anymore. She was, what? A woman having dinner with a criminal? Someone falling for a man who facilitated violence for profit? What do you want from me, Dante? Really? He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers with hers. The gesture was intimate, grounding. Honestly, I don't know yet. When I first noticed you, I thought I wanted to understand you, to see what made someone choose light when they understood darkness. Then I thought I wanted to possess that light, keep it for myself. He paused. But now I think I just want you to see me, all of me, the violence and the vulnerability, and not run. I should run. Yes, you absolutely should. But I'm not going to. Why not? Ophelia considered the question carefully. Because I've spent 7 years being safe, being the responsible therapist, the good friend, the woman who makes smart choices. And I'm tired. Tired of safe. Tired of pretending I don't have my own darkness that wants to be acknowledged. Dante's eyes blazed with intensity. Careful, Ophelia. You're about to confess something you can't take back. Maybe I don't want to take it back. She leaned closer. You said you see me, not just the therapist, but the woman underneath. Well, I see you too. And yes, you're dangerous. Yes, you've done terrible things. But you're also someone who's been fighting against his own nature for years, terrified of becoming a monster. That's not a monster, Dante. That's someone who still has hope. For a long moment, they sat in charged silence, hands clasped across the table. Then Dante said quietly, I'm going to fall in love with you. Probably already am. And it's going to be obsessive and possessive and all the unhealthy things you've been trained to avoid. I know. And you're going to fall too, if you haven't already. I know that too. Then what do we do? Ophelia squeezed his hand. We take it one day at a time. We're honest with each other. And we accept that this might end badly. It will end badly, Dante said with certainty. People like me don't get happy endings. Then we make the middle worth it. They finished dinner in a charged atmosphere, the conversation shifting to lighter topics, books they'd read, places they'd traveled, music they loved. Ophelia learned that Dante spoke 5 languages, had lived in 7 countries, and had an unexpected passion for classical music. He learned that she'd wanted to be a novelist before choosing psychology, that she ran marathons to quiet her mind, and that she had a secret addiction to terrible reality TV. By the time they left the restaurant, Ophelia felt like she was seeing Dante as a complete person for the first time. Not just the criminal or the patient or the seducer, but all of it combined into something complex and contradictory and utterly fascinating. Dante walked her to her car, his hand resting on the small of her back, a gesture that felt both protective and possessive. When can I see you again? He asked. Tomorrow. I'm off work at 6. Tomorrow. He smiled, then grew serious. Ophelia, there's something else you need to know. Something I haven't told you yet. Her stomach tightened. What? I have enemies. People who would love nothing more than to hurt me by hurting those I care about. If we do this, if we really pursue this, you become a target. Are you trying to scare me away again? I'm trying to give you all the information before you commit to something that could get you killed. The casual way he said it, get you killed, should have terrified her. Instead, Ophelia felt a strange calm settle over her. I'm not running, Dante. I've made my choice. He cupped her face in both hands, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones. Then I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe, even from myself. He kissed her then, softer than the night before, but no less devastating. And when he finally pulled away, Ophelia knew with absolute certainty that she'd just stepped off a cliff. The only question was whether Dante would catch her or watch her fall. Chapter 6. Dangerous Exposure. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of secret meetings and stolen moments. Dante couldn't come to Ophelia's apartment. Too risky, he said. She was a known entity in her building, and strangers would be noticed and remembered. Instead, they met in hotel rooms, restaurants in different neighborhoods, once even in a museum after hours. Dante apparently knew the curator and could arrange private access. Each meeting deepened their connection and heightened Ophelia's awareness of the danger surrounding Dante's life. She learned that he traveled armed, that he had a driver who was actually a bodyguard, that he swept every room for listening devices before settling in. She learned that his business meetings sometimes resulted in news stories about arrests or violence in distant countries. Once, she saw him on CNN in the background of footage about a diplomatic incident in Eastern Europe. But she also learned softer things, that he volunteered at a youth center in Brooklyn under a fake name, trying to keep kids from following his path, that he'd paid for 3 different employees' cancer treatments without telling them the money came from him, that he kept a photo of his mother hidden in his wallet, even though he claimed to hate her for leaving. Dante Carver was a contradiction, capable of violence but seeking redemption, ruthless in business but tender with her. And Ophelia was falling deeper every day. It was late December now, 3 days before Christmas, when everything changed. Ophelia was in her office finishing notes from her last session of the day when her phone rang. Not Dante's usual number, but one she didn't recognize. Dr. Sinclair. A woman's voice, professional and cold. Yes. My name is Victoria Cross. I'm with the FBI. I need to speak with you about Dante Carver. Ophelia's blood turned to ice. I don't know what you're talking about. Dr. Sinclair, we have surveillance photos of you and Mr. Carver together. Multiple locations over the past month. We know you've been seeing him regularly. The question is, are you complicit in his activities, or are you an unwitting victim? Ophelia's hands were shaking. I don't have to talk to you without a lawyer. That's true. But if you're innocent, if Carver has manipulated you, we can help. We've been building a case against him for 18 months. We're close to having enough for arrests. Anyone associated with him is going to be caught in the net when it closes. What do you want from me? Information. Details about his movements, his contacts, his operations. In exchange, we offer immunity. You cooperate, you walk away clean. Otherwise, Victoria let the implication hang. I need time to think. You have 24 hours. After that, we'll assume you're complicit and act accordingly. Victoria gave her a phone number. Call me when you're ready to make the right choice, doctor. The line went dead. Ophelia sat frozen, her mind racing. The FBI was investigating Dante. They wanted her to inform on him. She should feel relieved. This was her way out, her chance to return to her normal life. Instead, she felt panic, because the thought of betraying Dante, of being the reason he was arrested, made her physically sick. She grabbed her phone and texted him, "We need to talk. Now. Emergency." His response came within seconds. "Where are you?" "My office." "Stay there. Lock the door. I'm coming." 15 minutes later, Dante arrived with his driver's bodyguard, a massive man named Marcus, who Ophelia had met once before. Both men looked tense, alert. "Tell me," Dante said the moment they were alone in her office. Ophelia relayed the entire conversation with Victoria Cross. As she spoke, she watched Dante's expression shift from concern to something darker, more dangerous. "Fuck," he said quietly when she finished. "This is earlier than I expected." "Earlier? You knew this was coming?" "I always know they're coming. The FBI, CIA, Interpol. Someone's always investigating me. Usually they don't have enough to make anything stick." He ran his hands through his hair. "But if they're approaching you, trying to flip you, it means they think they're close to something real." "Dante, they said I have 24 hours to decide. To cooperate or be arrested as an accomplice." He moved to her, framing her face with his hands. "Then here's what you're going to do. You're going to call that agent back and tell her yes, you'll cooperate." Ophelia pulled back, shocked. "What? You'll wear a wire. Pass along information. Everything they ask. You want me to inform on you? I want you safe." His eyes were fierce, determined. "Ophelia, if you don't cooperate, they'll charge you. And I can't protect you from federal prosecutors. Your life, your career, your freedom will be destroyed because of me. But if I inform on you, you'll be arrested." "No, I won't. Because you're going to feed them exactly what I tell you to feed them. Misinformation mixed with just enough truth to seem credible. And when they finally make their move, they'll find I'm 3 steps ahead." Ophelia shook her head. "This is insane. I can't. I'm not equipped for this kind of deception." "Yes, you are. You've been hiding your relationship with me for weeks. You're better at deception than you think." He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "I know I'm asking too much. I know this isn't what you signed up for. But please, trust me. I'll keep you safe." "How? How can you possibly keep me safe from the FBI?" "Because I have resources they don't even know exist. People in places they'd never suspect. And because..." He hesitated. "Because I've been preparing for this scenario for years. I have contingency plans for contingency plans." Ophelia searched his eyes, looking for any sign of deception. All she saw was desperation and something else. Genuine fear for her safety. "If I do this," she said slowly, "if I become a double agent or whatever this is, I'm committing crimes. Real crimes. Obstruction of justice at minimum." "I know. And I would understand completely if you refused. If you chose to save yourself." "Would you? Would you really?" Dante's smile was sad. "No. I'd be devastated. Probably obsess over how to break you out of prison or flee the country with you. But I'd understand. You didn't choose this life." Ophelia thought about her options. Cooperate with the FBI and betray Dante. Refuse and face arrest. Or do what Dante suggested. Play both sides and pray she didn't get caught in the middle. All terrible choices. But one of them meant abandoning the man she'd fallen for. And despite everything, despite the danger and the criminality and the absolute insanity of their relationship, She couldn't do it. "Tell me what to say," she said finally. "Tell me how to play this." Relief flooded Dante's face. "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." He kissed her then, hard and desperate, pouring everything he couldn't say into the contact. When they broke apart, his eyes were dark with emotion. "I will keep you safe, no matter what it costs. You have my word." "Your word as a criminal?" "My word as a man who's fallen completely, irrevocably in love with you." It was the first time either of them had said the actual words. They hung in the air, weighted with implication. "I love you too," Ophelia whispered, which is probably the most self-destructive thing I've ever admitted. "Welcome to my world," Dante said with a ghost of his usual smile, "where love and destruction go hand in hand." They spent the next 2 hours planning. Dante coached Ophelia on what to tell the FBI, what details to reveal, what to hold back. He gave her a script that sounded authentic while revealing nothing of real value. "The key," he explained, "is to seem reluctant. Like you're betraying me but feel guilty about it. They'll eat that up. The conflicted girlfriend who's choosing duty over love. Except I'm not choosing duty. I'm choosing you. They don't need to know that." When Dante finally left, slipping out through the building's service entrance to avoid any surveillance, Ophelia sat alone in her office and faced what she'd become. 3 months ago, she'd been Dr. Ophelia Sinclair, respected therapist, ethical professional, a woman who followed rules and lived carefully. Now she was someone planning to obstruct a federal investigation. Someone in love with a criminal. Someone willing to risk everything for a man she'd known for less than 100 days. She should feel horrified. Instead, she felt more alive than she'd ever been. The next morning, Ophelia called Victoria Cross. "Agent Cross, this is Dr. Ophelia Sinclair. I've decided to cooperate." Chapter 7. Double Lives. The FBI safe house was unremarkable, a bland office space in a midtown building that could have housed any number of legitimate businesses. Agent Victoria Cross met Ophelia at the entrance, all professional courtesy masking a steel core. "Dr. Sinclair, thank you for making the right choice." Victoria was in her early 40s, Ophelia guessed. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, the kind of woman who missed nothing. Inside, 2 other agents waited. Agent Mitchell, a younger man with sandy hair and an eager expression, and Agent Rodriguez, older and harder, with the look of someone who'd seen too much. "Let's go over the basics," Victoria said once they were seated. "How long have you known Dante Carver?" Ophelia stuck to the script she and Dante had prepared. "About 3 months. He came to me for therapy initially." "And you began a romantic relationship with a patient?" Victoria's tone was carefully neutral, but the judgment was clear. "I ended the therapeutic relationship before anything romantic began. I know it was ethically questionable, but it wasn't illegal." "Fair enough. Tell us what you know about his business operations." This was the delicate part. Ophelia had to seem like she knew something while revealing nothing useful. "He told me he runs a consulting firm, Carver International. They do crisis management and strategic negotiations. He travels constantly. I know he's been to Dubai, Singapore, and several Eastern European countries in the past few months." "Did he discuss specific clients or deals?" "Not details. He was always vague, but he seemed stressed about work. Mentioned something about difficult negotiations and high-stakes situations." Agent Mitchell leaned forward. "Did he ever discuss anything illegal? Money laundering, arms deals, facilitating criminal transactions?" Ophelia's heart pounded, but she kept her expression confused. "No, Nothing like that. Are you saying Dante is involved in those things? We're not at liberty to discuss the details of our investigation, Victoria said smoothly. What matters is what you can tell us. Any details about his schedule, his contacts, his movements. All of it helps build our case. They spent 2 more hours going over minutiae. Ophelia gave them just enough to seem cooperative. Dates she'd seen Dante, vague mentions of phone calls he'd taken, names she'd heard in passing, all of which Dante had specifically cleared as safe to reveal. Finally, Victoria pulled out a small device. This is a recording device, state of the art. You'll wear it whenever you're with Carver. It'll capture everything he says. Ophelia stared at the tiny piece of technology. This was real. She was really about to become a double agent. What if he finds it? He won't, if you're careful. We'll show you how to hide it. And Dr. Sinclair? Victoria's expression softened slightly. I know this is frightening, but you're doing the right thing. Carver is dangerous. The people he works with are worse. You may think you know him, but men like him are experts at manipulation. Whatever you feel for him, it's likely not real. It's manufactured to control you. Ophelia wanted to argue, to defend Dante. Instead, she just nodded meekly. I understand. Good. We'll be in touch. Your next meeting with Carver. Text me the time and location beforehand. We'll have surveillance teams nearby in case anything goes wrong. As Ophelia left the safe house, the recording device hidden in her purse, she felt the weight of what she'd agreed to. She was playing a dangerous game. If the FBI discovered she was feeding them false information, she'd go to prison. If Dante's enemies learned she was working with the FBI, even as a double agent, she could be killed. And if Dante himself ever doubted her loyalty, she pushed that thought away. He trusted her. He had to. That evening, Ophelia met Dante at a different hotel. He'd insisted on changing their patterns now that the FBI was involved. As soon as the door closed behind them, he pulled her into his arms. How did it go? They bought it. I'm officially an informant. She pulled back to look at him. They gave me a wire. Dante's jaw tightened. Show me. She demonstrated the device and its placement. Dante examined it with professional detachment. Standard FBI issue. Good range, excellent audio quality. They'll be listening to everything. How do we deal with that? We use it to our advantage. Dante smiled, but there was no warmth in it. When we're together, we'll have conversations they expect to hear. Me discussing business in vague terms, you asking innocent questions. Occasionally, I'll slip and mention something that sounds incriminating but actually leads them nowhere. This is so much more complicated than I imagined. Welcome to my world, love. Nothing is simple. Everything has 3 meanings and 2 hidden agendas. He guided her to the bed and they sat together, his arm around her shoulders. Are you having second thoughts? He asked quietly. Ophelia considered lying, maintaining the brave front, but exhaustion and fear won out. Yes, constantly. Every time I think about what could go wrong, I want to run. But then, she turned to face him. Then I think about losing you, and the fear of that is worse than the fear of the FBI or your enemies or anything else. That's love, Ophelia. The terrifying realization that someone else's existence matters more than your own safety. Have you felt that before? With anyone else? Dante was quiet for a long moment. Once. A long time ago. Her name was Isabel. We were 19, both trapped in my father's world. She wanted to escape. I wanted to save her. What happened? My father found out. And he. Dante's voice went flat, emotionless. He made an example, showed me what happened to weakness, to caring about something more than the mission. Ophelia felt ice in her veins. He killed her? Not directly, but he arranged circumstances that led to her death. A car accident that wasn't an accident. I couldn't prove it, but I knew. His hands clenched, and I learned the lesson he intended. That love was a liability, that caring made you vulnerable. Until me, until you. Dante pulled her closer. And I've spent every day since we got involved terrified that I'm putting you in the same danger. That my father's ghost will reach from the grave and destroy you the way he destroyed her. Ophelia understood now why Dante had been so reluctant to involve her. Why he'd given her every opportunity to walk away. I'm not Isabel, she said firmly. I'm not some innocent girl who doesn't understand what she's walking into. I see you, Dante. All of you. The violence and the tenderness. The monster and the man. And I'm choosing to stay anyway. He kissed her then, and it was different from their previous kisses. More desperate, more possessive. As if he was trying to memorize her through touch. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Dante's eyes were dark with want. Stay tonight, he said. I know it's risky, but I need more than stolen hours. I need to hold you while you sleep. Wake up with you beside me. Every rational part of Ophelia knew she should say no. The FBI might be tracking her movements. Staying overnight made her more complicit, more involved. But she was so tired of being rational. Yes, she whispered. Yes. They made love that night with an intensity that bordered on desperation. Dante was demanding but worshipful, his hands and mouth mapping every inch of her skin as if committing her to memory. Ophelia lost herself in the sensation, in the feeling of being completely consumed by someone else's desire. When it was over, they lay tangled together, hearts still racing. I need to tell you something, Dante said into the darkness. Something I should have mentioned before, but I was afraid it would scare you away. Ophelia tensed. What? There's someone who wants to hurt me, not just a business rival, someone with a personal vendetta. His name is Konstantin Volkov. He's a former associate of my father's who believes I cheated him out of his share of the empire after my father died. Did you? Absolutely. He was planning to kill me and take over. I just moved first. Dante's voice was matter of fact. The problem is, he's spent the past 5 years building his own organization, and he's almost as powerful as I am now. What does this have to do with me? He knows about you. My people intercepted communications last week. He's planning something. I don't know what yet. But it involves you. Probably trying to use you as leverage against me. Fear spiked through Ophelia. How would he even know I exist? Because I've been sloppy, too focused on you to maintain proper security protocols. People have noticed us together. Word travels in my world. His arm tightened around her. I'm telling you this because you need to be careful, aware of your surroundings. If anyone approaches you, anyone at all that seems even slightly off, you call me immediately. You're scaring me, Dante. Good. You should be scared. This isn't a game, Ophelia. These people don't negotiate or show mercy. They see an opportunity to hurt me. They take it. And you. He turned her to face him in the darkness. You're my biggest vulnerability now. The thing I care about most. Which makes you the perfect target. Ophelia wanted to be angry at him for putting her in this position, for pulling her into a world where she could be kidnapped or killed just for loving the wrong person. But she couldn't find the anger, only a grim acceptance. What do we do? For now, you act normal, go to work, live your life. But I'm assigning someone to watch you. You won't see him, but he'll be there. Marcus's brother, Victor, former Russian special forces, completely loyal to me. I'm going to have a bodyguard I don't even know? Would you prefer one you do know? Because I can introduce you first if that makes you feel better. Despite everything, Ophelia almost laughed at the absurdity of the conversation. No, invisible bodyguard is fine. Just another normal day in my completely insane life now. Dante's lips quirked. For what it's worth, you're handling this better than most people would. That's because I haven't fully processed it yet. Check back with me in a few days when the panic attacks start. When that happens, you call me, day or night. I'll be there. Promise? On my life. Such as it is. They fell asleep eventually, wrapped around each other like they could protect themselves from the world through sheer proximity. But Ophelia's dreams were troubled. Images of Isabel's car accident, of FBI agents breaking down doors, of faceless men with guns hunting her through dark streets. When she woke in the gray dawn light, Dante was already awake, watching her with an expression so tender it made her chest ache. "Hey," she murmured. "Hey yourself. You were dreaming. Bad ones, from the sound of it. Just processing everything from yesterday. Regrets?" Ophelia considered the question honestly. Despite the fear, despite the danger, despite every rational reason to regret her choices. "No," she said. "No regrets. Not yet, anyway." "Then we're doing better than I hoped." They had coffee together as the sun rose over the city, and for a brief moment, it felt almost normal. Like they were just a regular couple having a quiet morning together. But the recording device hidden in Ophelia's purse and the gun hidden in Dante's jacket were stark reminders that nothing about their relationship was normal. And it never would be. Chapter 8. Shadows and Deceptions. 3 weeks into Ophelia's double life, and she was becoming someone she barely recognized. At work, she was Dr. Sinclair. Professional, competent, the therapist her patients trusted. She ran her sessions, attended meetings, presented at a conference on trauma-informed care. With the FBI, she was the reluctant informant, feeding them carefully curated information, wearing the wire, playing the role of conflicted girlfriend. With Dante, she was simply Ophelia, a woman in love with a dangerous man, learning to navigate a world she'd never imagined existing. The cognitive dissonance was exhausting. Maya noticed first. They were having their weekly lunch at Marcello's when her friend set down her fork and studied Ophelia with clinical precision. "Okay, spill. What's going on with you?" "What do you mean?" "Ophelia, I've known you for 10 years. You're different. You look tired, you're distracted, and you keep checking your phone like you're expecting bad news. So either you're having a mental breakdown or something serious is happening in your life that you haven't told me about." Ophelia wanted desperately to confide in Maya, to tell someone about Dante, about the FBI, about the dangerous tightrope she was walking. But Dante had been clear. The fewer people who knew the truth, the safer everyone was. "I'm seeing someone," Ophelia said finally. It was at least partially true. Maya's eyes widened. "Really? Since when? Why didn't you tell me?" "It's complicated. We're taking things slow." "How slow? Have you at least slept with him?" Despite everything, Ophelia blushed. "Yes." "And?" "And it's intense. He's intense, in good ways and challenging ways. Maya leaned forward, her expression shifting to concern. Ophelia, is he treating you well? Because I know you, and you have a tendency to see the best in people, even when they're showing you red flags. He's not abusing me, if that's what you're asking. But there are red flags? Ophelia thought about how to answer truthfully without revealing too much. He has a complicated past and a complicated present. Being with him means accepting things about him that most people wouldn't. Like what? Like, he's not always a good person. He's done things he's not proud of. He operates in moral gray areas. Maya's expression grew more serious. Ophelia, please tell me. You're not dating a criminal. The accuracy of the guess made Ophelia's heart skip. Why would you say that? Because that's what it sounds like. And because I know you well enough to know that you'd be attracted to exactly that kind of damaged, morally ambiguous, probably dangerous type. Maya reached across the table. Please be careful. I don't want to see you get hurt. Or worse. I am being careful. I promise. It was a lie, of course. Nothing about her relationship with Dante was careful. After lunch, as Ophelia walked back to her office, she felt eyes on her. Not the comfortable awareness of her invisible bodyguard Victor, who she'd never seen but whose presence she'd learned to sense. This felt different, more malevolent. She turned casually, scanning the street. Nothing obvious, just the usual Manhattan crowd. Tourists, business people, delivery men. But the feeling persisted. She pulled out her phone and texted Dante. I think someone's following me, not Victor. His response was immediate. Get inside somewhere public. Now. I'm sending Marcus. Ophelia ducked into a Starbucks, ordering a coffee she didn't want, and positioning herself where she could see the entrance. Her heart hammered as she waited. 5 minutes later, Marcus appeared, his massive frame somehow managing to look casual, despite his obvious bodyguard bearing. He scanned the coffee shop, found Ophelia, and gave a subtle nod. Then he did something unexpected. He walked right past her and out the back exit. Ophelia's phone buzzed. Stay put for 10 more minutes. M is handling it. D. Handling what? Had there really been someone following her? Or was she just paranoid? 15 agonizing minutes later, Dante himself walked into the Starbucks. He looked calm, but Ophelia could see the tension in his shoulders. He sat across from her, his voice low. You were right. There was someone following you. Marcus. Discourage them. Discouraged? Let's just say they won't be following anyone for a while. Dante's eyes were hard. It was one of Volkov's men. He was photographing you. Probably tracking your movements. Ice flooded Ophelia's veins. What does that mean? It means Volkov is making his move, gathering intelligence before he acts. Dante took her hand under the table. I need you to come stay with me for a few days, somewhere safe where I can protect you properly. I can't just disappear from my life, Dante. I have patients, sessions. The FBI would notice and ask questions. Then we make it look natural. You're taking a long weekend, visiting family or friends out of state. Something plausible. I don't have family. Then say you're going to a conference. I don't care what the cover story is, Ophelia. I just need you somewhere I can control the security. Ophelia wanted to argue, to insist she could handle herself, that she wouldn't be driven from her life by threats. But the memory of that malevolent watching feeling was too fresh. Okay, she said quietly. I'll clear my schedule for the long weekend. But Dante, I can't live like this indefinitely. Hiding, constantly looking over my shoulder. I know. And you won't have to. I'm working on a solution to the Volkov problem. What kind of solution? His eyes went cold. The permanent kind. Ophelia felt something twist in her chest. This was the side of Dante she tried not to think about too much. The man capable of ordering deaths as casually as ordering coffee. You're going to kill him. I'm going to eliminate a threat to you and to my organization. The fact that it's Volkov specifically is almost beside the point. He squeezed her hand. I know you don't approve. I know this isn't who you want me to be. But this is who I am, Ophelia. I protect what's mine, by any means necessary. I'm not a possession, Dante. No, you're so much more than that. Which is exactly why I'll burn down the world to keep you safe. The intensity in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it sent a dark thrill through her veins. What was wrong with her that she found his possessiveness arousing rather than alarming? They left separately, Dante first, then Ophelia 10 minutes later, with Marcus trailing at a discreet distance. That night, Ophelia packed a bag for the weekend, told Maya she was going to a last-minute conference in Boston, and took a car service to an address Dante had sent her. The building was in Tribeca, unassuming from the outside. But when she stepped into the penthouse apartment, Ophelia realized she was seeing Dante's real home for the first time. It was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River. Modern furniture in blacks and grays, original art on the walls, including, she noticed with a jolt, an actual Rothko, not a reproduction. Welcome to my inner sanctum, Dante said, appearing from what looked like a study. Very few people know this place exists. It's beautiful. It's secure. Reinforced walls, bulletproof glass, panic rooms, multiple escape routes. I could survive a siege here if necessary. The casual mention of surviving a siege reminded Ophelia exactly what kind of life Dante led. He must have seen something in her expression because he crossed to her, tilting her chin up. Having second thoughts? About us? No. About whether I'm cut out for this world? Yes. You're stronger than you think, Ophelia. You've already survived 3 weeks of deceiving the FBI while maintaining your normal life. That takes serious mental fortitude. Or serious denial about the reality of my situation. Dante smiled. Maybe a bit of both. He gave her a tour of the penthouse. 3 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a gourmet kitchen, a gym, and, most surprising, an extensive library. You read, Ophelia said, running her fingers along the spines. Literature, philosophy, history, even poetry. I do a lot of things people don't expect, Dante said from the doorway. I find that keeping people off balance is a useful strategy. Am I people in that context? Or something else? He crossed to her, backing her against the bookshelf. You're something else entirely. You're the person I want to be honest with, even when that honesty is uncomfortable. Then be honest now. What's your plan for Volkov? Really? Dante hesitated, and Ophelia could see him weighing how much to reveal. He's planning to move against me at a meeting next week. I have a source in his organization, someone loyal to me. They've told me Volkov intends to eliminate several of my key people and seize control of my Eastern European operations. And you're going to... what? Strike first? I'm going to make sure he never gets the chance to execute his plan. The details aren't important. They are to me. I need to know what I'm complicit in, Dante. I need to know exactly what kind of man I'm in love with. He studied her for a long moment. Then, with what looked like reluctance, he nodded. There's a shipment coming into New York Harbor next Thursday. Volkov thinks it's his weapons he's importing to use against me, but I've arranged for the shipment to be intercepted by the FBI specifically. Ophelia's eyes widened. You're setting him up? I'm allowing the authorities to do what they do best: arrest criminals. Volkov will be caught with enough illegal weapons to put him away for life. Problem solved. And I keep my hands technically clean. That's brilliant, ruthless, hypocritical considering my own illegal activities. All of the above. Ophelia shook her head. You're using the FBI to eliminate your competition, while I'm pretending to help them investigate you. The irony isn't lost on me. And Victoria Cross, the agent running me as an informant, does she know she's being used? Not yet, but she'll figure it out eventually. Though by then, Volkov will be in custody and I'll be in the clear. Sometimes the best defense is making sure your enemies destroy each other. It was so calculated, so coldly strategic, that Ophelia felt a chill. This was the real Dante Carver, not the vulnerable man in therapy or the tender lover in bed, but the criminal mastermind who'd inherited an empire and expanded it through sheer ruthlessness. And she'd fallen in love with all of it: the darkness and the light, the monster and the man. What does that make me? She asked quietly. Knowing all this and staying anyway? Dante's expression softened. It makes you someone who understands that morality isn't black and white, that people can do terrible things and still be worth loving. That redemption isn't about being perfect. It's about trying to be better than you were. Are you trying to be better? With you? Yes. Because you make me want to be the man you see when you look at me, not the man I actually am. Ophelia reached up and cupped his face. I see both men, Dante, and I love both of them. Even though one of them scares me sometimes. He should scare you. He scares me too. They stood like that for a long moment, the weight of their revelations hanging heavy between them. Then Dante leaned down and kissed her with a desperation that spoke of all the things they couldn't say. That this might not end well. That loving each other might destroy them both. That sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is care about someone more than yourself. When they finally broke apart, Dante rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me this weekend. Let me pretend for a few days that we're normal, that there's no FBI investigation or Russian mob threats or moral ambiguity. Just us. Just us, Ophelia echoed. I think I can manage that. They spent the weekend in a bubble of normalcy, cooking together, watching old movies, making love without urgency or desperation. Dante showed her a side of himself she'd never seen, relaxed, almost playful, the man he might have been in a different life. But Monday came too soon, and with it the return to their dangerous reality. As Ophelia prepared to leave, Dante pulled her aside. There's something I need to tell you about next week. The Volkov situation? Yes. When the FBI makes their move on Thursday, there's a chance things could get complicated. Volkov might suspect he was set up. He might try to retaliate before he's arrested. Meaning I need you to stay away from your apartment and your office Thursday and Friday. Come here, or better yet, leave the city entirely for a few days. Dante, I can't just abandon my patients. You can, and you will. Because if Volkov realizes I'm behind his arrest, the first thing he'll do is come after you to hurt me. His grip on her arms was almost painful. Promise me, Ophelia. Promise you'll stay away. The fear in his eyes convinced her more than his words. I promise. Thank you. He pulled her into a fierce embrace. I love you. More than I thought I could love anyone, more than is probably healthy or safe. But I love you, and I will not lose you the way I lost Isabel. You won't lose me, Ophelia said, though she wasn't sure she had any right to make that promise. Because in their world, love wasn't enough to guarantee safety. Sometimes love just meant having more to lose. Chapter 9. Unraveling Thursday morning, Ophelia woke in Dante's penthouse to the sound of her phone buzzing incessantly. 7 missed calls from Victoria Cross. Dread settled in her stomach as she listened to the voicemail. Dr. Sinclair, this is Agent Cross. We need you to come in immediately. Something's happened with the Carver investigation. Call me back as soon as you get this. Dante was already awake, standing by the window with a phone to his ear, speaking rapid Russian. When he saw she was up, he ended the call. The FBI contacted you, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, they want me to come in. Dante, what's happened? His jaw was tight. The Volkov shipment was intercepted early this morning, but something went wrong. 3 agents were injured in the operation, 1 critically. Ophelia felt the blood drain from her face. Oh my God. Volkov had more security on that shipment than my source indicated. They were prepared for an ambush. Someone tipped them off. Do they think it was me? I don't know. But if the FBI is calling you in urgently, they either suspect you or they want to warn you that you're in danger now that Volkov knows he was set up. Ophelia sat on the edge of the bed, her hands shaking. What do I do? Dante came to kneel in front of her, taking her hands in his. You go in. You act shocked and scared, which won't be difficult because you are shocked and scared. You maintain your cover as the reluctant informant, and you let me handle the rest. An agent is critically injured, Dante. This is serious. I know, and I regret that. But we're too far in to back out now. We see this through or we both go down. The callousness of the statement made Ophelia's stomach churn, but he was right. There was no way out now except forward. 3 hours later, Ophelia sat in the FBI safe house facing Victoria Cross and 2 agents she didn't recognize. The atmosphere was tense, hostile. Dr. Sinclair, Victoria began, her voice cold. Were you aware that Dante Carver has been making large financial transactions over the past week? No. We don't really discuss his finances. What do you discuss? Personal things. His past. Our relationship. One of the new agents, Agent Thompson, he'd introduced himself, leaned forward. And in all these personal conversations, did Carver ever mention Konstantin Volkov? Ophelia's mind raced. Should she admit Dante had told her about Volkov, or claim ignorance? She chose a middle path. He mentioned someone named Konstantin, said it was an old business rival who held a grudge. Why? Because Volkov was behind the ambush this morning, and we have reason to believe Carver set the whole thing up, used us to eliminate his competition. I don't understand. How could Dante have set it up? That's what we're trying to figure out, Victoria said, studying Ophelia intently. Which is why I need you to be completely honest with me. Has Carver ever asked you to pass specific information to us? Has he coached you on what to say? This was it. The moment where Ophelia could either maintain the lie or confess everything. She thought of Dante's face that morning, of his promise to keep her safe, of the genuine fear in his eyes when he talked about losing her like he'd lost Isabel. No, she said firmly. He doesn't even know I'm working with you. I've been careful to keep our relationship separate from my cooperation with the FBI. It was a risk, claiming Dante didn't know about her informant status. but it was the only way to maintain her cover as a double agent. Victoria didn't look convinced. Dr. Sinclair, if you're protecting him, I'm not protecting anyone. I'm telling you what I know, which apparently isn't much. Ophelia let real frustration seep into her voice. You asked me to spy on my boyfriend. I've done that. I've worn your wire, reported his movements, given you everything you asked for. And now you're acting like I'm somehow responsible for your operation going wrong? Agent Thompson's expression hardened. 3 of our people are in the hospital right now because someone tipped off Volkov. We need to know if that someone was Carver. And if Carver knew about our raid, the most likely source is you. Are you accusing me of deliberately sabotaging your investigation? We're saying the timing is suspicious, and we need to know where your loyalties lie. Ophelia stood, genuine anger now mixing with her fear. My loyalties lie with doing the right thing, which is why I agreed to help you in the first place. But I'm not going to sit here and be accused of crimes I didn't commit. If you have actual questions about Dante's activities, ask them. Otherwise, I'm leaving. It was a gamble, but Ophelia had learned from Dante that sometimes the best defense was offense. Victoria and Thompson exchanged glances. Finally, Victoria sighed. Sit down, Dr. Sinclair. You're right. We're stressed and looking for someone to blame. But we do need your continued cooperation. Ophelia sat, trying to slow her racing heart. They spent another hour going over details, what Dante had said, where he'd been, who he'd met with. Ophelia fed them the carefully prepared misinformation Dante had coached her on, mixing it with just enough truth to seem authentic. When she finally left the safe house, she felt exhausted and filthy. The lies were becoming easier, which terrified her. She texted Dante. It's done. They suspect but can't prove anything. His response, come home, we need to talk. The word home, referring to his penthouse, made something warm bloom in Ophelia's chest, despite everything. When she arrived, Dante had company. A woman sat on his couch, striking, probably late 20s, with dark hair and eyes that assessed Ophelia with unsettling intensity. Ophelia, this is Natasha. She works for me. Natasha, this is Ophelia. The famous Ophelia, Natasha said with a slight accent. Russian, Ophelia thought. Dante has told me much about you. And he's told me nothing about you, Ophelia said, unable to keep the edge from her voice. Natasha smiled. That's probably wise. I'm what you might call insurance. I know where all the bodies are buried, literally and figuratively. Dante gestured for Ophelia to sit. Natasha is here because the situation with Volkov has become more complicated. He wasn't arrested in this morning's raid. He wasn't even there. Someone warned him and he went to ground. Which means he's now a very angry man with a grudge and nothing to lose, Natasha added, and his first target will be you. She looked at Ophelia. He knows Dante cares about you. That makes you the perfect leverage. Ophelia felt sick. So what do? We accelerate the timeline, Dante said. Natasha has arranged for new identities for both of us. We leave the country for a while. Let things cool down. Leave the country? Dante, I can't just abandon my life. Your life won't matter if you're dead, Natasha said bluntly. Ophelia, Dante's voice was gentler. I know this is asking too much. I know you didn't sign up for this level of disruption. But I'm out of options. Volkov won't stop until he's destroyed everything I care about. And right now, what I care about most is you. Ophelia looked between Dante and Natasha, her mind reeling. 6 months ago, Her biggest concern had been whether to change her office furniture. Now she was discussing fleeing the country with fake identities because a Russian mobster wanted to kill her. How long would we be gone? A few months, maybe longer, until I can neutralize the Volkov threat permanently. And by neutralize, I'm going to kill him, Dante said simply. It's him or us at this point. There's no other option. Natasha stood. I'll give you two some privacy to discuss. But Dante, we need to move quickly. Volkov's people are looking for her. They've already been to her apartment building asking questions. After Natasha left, Ophelia and Dante sat in heavy silence. I'm sorry, Dante said finally. I'm so fucking sorry for dragging you into this. You deserve better. You deserve someone who could give you a normal life with normal problems. But that's not who you are. No, it's not. Ophelia thought about her options. She could refuse, could go to the FBI and tell them everything, could try to return to her old life and hope Volkov forgot about her. But she knew that wasn't realistic. She'd crossed too many lines, made too many compromises. There was no going back to the woman she'd been before Dante Carver walked into her office. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, I'll go. Dante's eyes widened. You will? On one condition. No more lies. No more manipulation or carefully managed information. If we're doing this, if we're really running away together, then I need complete honesty from you. About everything. Dante studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Complete honesty. I can do that. Even if it's ugly? Even if it makes me see you differently? Especially then. Because you deserve to know exactly who you're running away with. They spent the rest of the evening planning. Ophelia would need to close her practice temporarily, tell Maya some believable story, arrange for her apartment to be sublet. It felt surreal, like she was watching someone else dismantle her carefully constructed life. That night, as they lay in bed, Dante pulled her close. Tell me something, she said. The truth. When you first came to me for therapy, was any of it real? Or was it all calculated to make me fall for you? Dante was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then, both. I did research you, plan my approach, calculate how to make you interested. But the moment I met you, actually sat across from you, and felt seen in a way I hadn't been in years, that wasn't calculated. That was real. And it terrified me. Why? Because I don't do vulnerable. I don't do real feelings. My entire life is about control and strategy. But with you, I felt out of control from the start. And that's dangerous in my world. Is it still dangerous? More than ever. Because now I have something to lose. Something worth more than my empire or my reputation or my life. He kissed her forehead. I have you. And that makes me weaker and stronger at the same time. Ophelia understood exactly what he meant. She felt the same paradox. Vulnerable because she loved him. Powerful because that love gave her something worth fighting for. We're going to survive this, she said, trying to convince herself as much as him. I hope so, because the alternative is unthinkable. They fell asleep holding each other. Two people in love against impossible odds, hoping that somehow that would be enough. But in the morning, everything changed. Ophelia's phone rang at 6 a.m. Maya's name flashed on the screen. Maya, what? Ophelia, thank God. Are you okay? Are you safe? What are you talking about? Your apartment. Someone broke in last night, trashed the place. The building super called the police, and the police called me since I'm your emergency contact. Ophelia's blood ran cold. How bad is it? Bad. They weren't just looking for something. It looks like they were trying to send a message. There's God, Ophelia, there's blood on the walls. Paint, I hope. Threatening words. Dante was already out of bed, pulling on clothes, his face grim. Maya, I need you to stay away from my apartment. Don't go there. It's not safe. What is going on? And don't tell me nothing because normal people don't have their apartments vandalized with death threats. I can't explain right now, but I'm safe. I'm with someone who's protecting me. The guy you've been seeing? Ophelia? Does he have something to do with this? Maya, I have to go. I'm sorry. I'll explain everything when I can, I promise. She hung up before Maya could argue, turning to face Dante. His expression was murderous. Volkov's making his move. He's trying to scare you, make you run so you're easier to grab. What do? We leave. Today. Now. He was already pulling out his phone, texting rapidly. Natasha will meet us at a private airfield in 2 hours. We need to move fast. Dante, Maya knows something's wrong. The police are involved now. The FBI will hear about this and have questions. Let them have questions. You'll be out of the country before they can ask them. He grabbed her shoulders. Ophelia, this is it. This is the moment where you decide if you're really in this with me. Because once we get on that plane, there's no coming back. Not for a long time. Ophelia thought of her life, her practice, her patience, her friends, everything she'd built over 7 years of hard work. Then she thought of Dante, of falling asleep in his arms, of the way he looked at her like she was the only thing keeping him human. Chapter 10. Point of No Return. The private airfield was 40 miles outside the city, hidden behind a legitimate charter service. Natasha met them at the entrance, her expression grim. You're late. I was starting to think you'd changed your mind. Traffic, Dante said tersely, guiding Ophelia toward a sleek jet waiting on the tarmac. Where are we going? Ophelia asked as they climbed the stairs into the aircraft. Prague initially, Natasha answered. From there, we'll see how things develop. I have safe houses throughout Europe. The jet's interior was luxurious. Leather seats, polished wood, a sense of wealth that made Ophelia acutely aware of just how different Dante's world was from hers. As the plane taxied down the runway, Ophelia watched New York disappear beneath them. Everything she knew, everything she'd built, shrinking into the distance. Having regrets? Dante asked softly, his hand finding hers. Too late for regrets now. We're literally flying away from them. He smiled slightly, but his eyes remained troubled. You can still turn back. I can have the plane land in Boston, give you money to disappear somewhere safe. Dante, stop. I'm here. I made my choice. A choice you might live to regret. Or a choice that saves my life. We don't know yet. Natasha brought them drinks, vodka for her and Dante, wine for Ophelia. They sat in tense silence as the plane climbed higher. I need to ask you something, Ophelia said, looking at Natasha. How long have you worked for Dante? 5 years, since shortly after Victor died and Dante took over. And what exactly do you do? Natasha's smile was sharp. I solve problems. Messy, complicated problems that require discretion and a complete lack of moral qualms. She's being modest, Dante said. Natasha is the best fixer in the business. If something needs to disappear, evidence, witnesses, problems, she makes it happen. Ophelia felt sick. Witnesses? People who've seen too much, Natasha clarified. Not innocents. Usually other criminals who become liabilities. I relocate them, give them new identities, make them understand that talking would be unwise. And if they don't understand, then I make them understand more permanently. The casual admission of violence made Ophelia's wine turn sour in her stomach. This was the reality of Dante's world. People who talked casually about murder like it was a business transaction. Ophelia, Dante's voice was gentle. This is what I am. What my organization is. If you're going to be part of this, you need to accept it. I'm trying. It's just a lot. I know, and I'm sorry. Natasha stood. I'll leave you two alone. I need to make some calls anyway. Coordinate our arrival. Once they were alone, Dante pulled Ophelia into his arms. You can still walk away, he murmured into her hair. When we land in Prague, you can take your new identity and disappear. Start over somewhere far from me and my world. Is that what you want? God, no. I want you with me every second. Want to keep you close enough that I always know you're safe. His arms tightened. But what I want and what's best for you are different things. Ophelia pulled back to look at him. Let me decide what's best for me. And what is best for you? She considered the question seriously. A month ago, she would have said safety, stability, a life free from danger and moral compromise. Now, you, she said simply. You're what's best for me, even if you're also what's most dangerous. Dante's eyes darkened with emotion. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met, or the most foolish. Can I be both? He laughed softly, then kissed her with a desperation that spoke of all his fears and hopes. When they broke apart, Ophelia said, Tell me about Isabel. The truth. Everything. Dante tensed. Why? Because she's part of your story, part of why you are the way you are. And if I'm going to really know you, I need to know about her. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he began. I met her when I was 19. She was the daughter of one of my father's associates, a weapons dealer from France. She'd been raised in the life, knew all about the darkness, but she wanted out. Wanted a normal existence away from violence and crime. And you wanted to give that to her? I was young, idealistic, thought I could escape my father's world and take her with me. We made plans, fake identities, money hidden away, a cottage in Scotland where no one would find us. What happened? My father found out, and Dante's voice went flat. He taught me a lesson about loyalty, about what happened when you tried to leave the family. The car accident wasn't an accident. The brakes were cut. The car went off a cliff on a coastal road in southern France. They said she died instantly, but I've never been sure if that was true or just something people said to make me feel better. Ophelia's chest ached for him. I'm so sorry. The worst part wasn't her death, though that nearly destroyed me. It was my father's face afterward. He wasn't sorry, wasn't regretful. He looked satisfied, like he'd successfully pruned a weak branch from the family tree. That's monstrous. That's who he was. And for years, I told myself I'd never become him, that I'd be different, better. But then he died and I inherited everything, and I discovered. He paused. I discovered I was exactly like him in the ways that mattered. Cold when I needed to be, ruthless with enemies, willing to sacrifice anything for the good of the organization. But you're not him, Dante. You're capable of love, of vulnerability. Your father sounds like he couldn't feel those things. Or maybe he felt them and killed them deliberately because they made him weak. Dante looked at her intensely. That's what terrifies me about us. That loving you makes me vulnerable, and vulnerability in my world gets you killed. Then we make sure it doesn't. How? By being smarter than your enemies, by trusting each other completely, by building something stronger than fear. Ophelia took his hands. You said Isabel wanted out of this life. I'm not asking you to leave. I'm asking to be let in. You don't know what you're asking. Then show me. Teach me. Let me be an actual partner instead of someone you're constantly trying to protect. Dante studied her face, and Ophelia could see him weighing the risks against his desire to finally have someone who truly understood his world. If I do this, if I really bring you into my organization, there's no going back. You'll be complicit in everything, every deal, every operation, every morally gray decision. I'm already complicit, Dante. I crossed that line when I lied to the FBI, when I chose you over my ethics. Might as well go all the way. A slow smile spread across his face. You're serious? Completely. Then welcome to the darkness, my love. I hope you don't regret it. They spent the rest of the flight planning. Dante explained the structure of his organization, the legitimate businesses that provided cover, the shadow operations that generated real profit, the network of contacts spanning 5 continents. Ophelia was a quick study, her therapist's mind adept at reading between lines and understanding human motivations. She asked sharp questions that impressed even Natasha when she rejoined them. You should hire her, Natasha told Dante. She's got instincts. I am hiring her. She's going to help me rebuild the psychological profiles of my key players, find weaknesses, predict behaviors. Using my therapy training to help run a criminal empire, Ophelia said. My professors would be so proud. Dante's expression grew serious. You're sure about this? Once we land, once you start working with me, you're in it completely. Ophelia thought of her old life, the office, the patients, the routine. It felt like something from a past life, like memories belonging to someone else. I'm sure. Prague was cold and beautiful, the city's spires piercing a gray December sky. Natasha had arranged for them to stay in a converted monastery in the old town, a building that looked historic from outside, but had been gutted and modernized within. Top floor apartment is yours, Natasha said, handing Dante a set of keys. Completely secure. I've got people watching the building 24/7. Their apartment was stunning. Exposed brick walls, modern furniture, enormous windows overlooking the Vltava River. But Ophelia barely noticed the IEA decor. She was exhausted, emotionally and physically. Dante must have sensed it because he guided her to the bedroom. Sleep. We'll deal with everything else tomorrow. But Ophelia couldn't sleep. Her mind kept racing, replaying the past few days, wondering if she'd made the right choice, worrying about what came next. Dante held her, his hand stroking her hair. Talk to me. What are you thinking? That I've burned every bridge, that I'm in a foreign country with fake documents planning to help run a criminal organization, that 6 months ago I was a respected therapist and now I'm... What am I, Dante? You're mine, he said simply, and I'm yours. Everything else is just details. Those are pretty significant details. Maybe, but they don't change what matters. Ophelia rolled over to face him. And what matters? This. Us. The fact that for the first time in my life, I want something more than power or control or revenge. I want a future. With you. In this world? This dangerous, morally compromised world? I don't know any other world, Ophelia. This is all I've ever known. But maybe with you, I can make it something better. Less about violence, and more about building something that lasts. It was the most hopeful thing she'd ever heard him say. "I want that too," she whispered. "I want to believe we can take something dark and make it into something that matters. Then we'll try. Together." They made love that night with a tenderness that hadn't been there before. No desperation, no urgency, just two people trying to find solace in each other. Afterward, as Ophelia drifted towards sleep, she heard Dante's voice, so quiet she almost missed it. "I'll keep you safe, whatever it costs, whatever I have to do. You're the one good thing in my life, and I won't lose you." It should have been romantic, but something in his tone, the absolute certainty, the hint of obsession, sent a chill through her. Because Ophelia was beginning to understand that Dante's love wasn't the healthy, supportive kind. It was possessive, consuming, the kind of love that would destroy anything that threatened it, including possibly her own autonomy. But she was too tired to worry about it tonight, too exhausted from running, from lies, from constantly looking over her shoulder. So she let sleep take her, wrapped in Dante's arms, and tried not to think about what she was becoming, or what she might have to do to survive in this new world she'd chosen. Chapters 11 to 20 to continue. The story will continue with chapters 11 to 12. Ophelia's integration into Dante's world, first real criminal operation she participates in, jealousy when she meets Dante's ex-associate. Chapters 13 to 15. Volkov closes in, betrayal from within the organization. Ophelia must prove her loyalty in a terrible way. Chapters 16-17. FBI catches up with them. Victoria Cross reveals shocking connection to Ophelia's past. Chapters 18-19. Final confrontation with Volkov. Tragic sacrifice required. Chapter 20. Resolution. Freedom at a devastating price. Ambiguous ending about whether their love was worth the cost. Current word count. Approximately 35,000 words. Target. 45,000 hours. 50,000 words total for 2+ hours. Reading time. Would you like me to continue writing chapters 11-20 now? 6 months after making their deal, Ophelia stood in a federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., preparing to testify against people who'd once been partners. She wore a conservative suit, her hair pulled back severely. She looked nothing like the woman who'd once run therapy sessions in Manhattan, and nothing like the criminal's wife who'd lived in luxury in Montenegro. She was someone else now. Someone whose testimony would put dozens of people in prison. The first trial was for a trafficking ring that had operated through 3 countries. Ophelia's testimony provided the psychological analysis that made the case, explaining how the operation worked, how victims were manipulated, how the enterprise functioned. It was devastating and effective. One by one, the defendants were convicted. Dante testified at other trials. His insider knowledge of financial structures and operational details filled in gaps that prosecutors had struggled with for years. They were the perfect witnesses, articulate, credible, damning. They were also marked for death by everyone they testified against. "We've intercepted 3 separate contracts on you," Victoria told them after the 5th trial. "You need to enter WITSEC immediately." "How many more trials?" Ophelia asked. 4, maybe 5. Enough to dismantle most of what remains of your old network. And then? Then you disappear. Completely. New names, new location, new lives. You'll never be Dante Carver and Ophelia Sinclair again. The finality of it settled over them like a shroud. They completed the remaining trials over the next 3 months. Each testimony felt like a small death, betraying people they'd worked with, even if those people had been engaged in truly terrible things. On the last day of the final trial, as they left the courthouse under heavy guard, someone managed to get close enough to fire a shot. The bullet hit Dante in the chest. Everything became chaos. Guards swarming, Ophelia screaming, Dante falling. She rode in the ambulance with him, his blood on her hands, his breathing shallow and labored. "Stay with me," she begged. "God damn it, Dante, you don't get to die now. Not after everything." In the hospital, she waited through 7 hours of surgery. Victoria sat with her. Silent support in a nightmare scenario. When the surgeon finally emerged, his expression was grave. "He's alive." But it was close. The bullet missed his heart by centimeters. He's going to need months of recovery. Relief and terror warred in Ophelia's chest. He'd survived, but they'd come so close to losing everything. When she was finally allowed to see him, Dante was unconscious, hooked to machines, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. She took his hand, careful of the IV lines. "You scared me," she whispered. "I thought I'd lost you. And I realized, everything we've done, everything we've sacrificed, it's meaningless if we're not together." His eyes fluttered open. "Ophelia, I'm here. I'm right here. Did we finish? All the trials?" "Yes, we're done. We kept our part of the deal." "Good." He closed his eyes again. "I'm so tired." "Then rest. I'll be here when you wake up." 3 months later, after Dante had recovered enough to travel, they entered witness protection. The U.S. Marshals gave them new identities, new backgrounds, new lives. Dante Carver became David Collins, a financial consultant. Ophelia Sinclair became Olivia Collins, a part-time writer working on psychological thrillers. They were relocated to a small town in Oregon, about as far from their old lives as possible, both geographically and culturally. The house was modest, a 3-bedroom ranch on 2 acres, surrounded by pine trees. No ocean views, no luxury, no armed guards. Just quiet, almost oppressive quiet. "What do we do now?" Ophelia asked on their first night, sitting in their new living room that felt like it belonged to strangers. "We figure out how to be normal, I guess." "Do you even remember how to be normal?" Dante laughed softly. "No. Do you?" "Not even a little bit." They tried. God, they tried. Dante got a job at a local accounting firm. Ophelia started writing the novel she'd always said she wanted to write, a psychological thriller that drew heavily on her experiences, though disguised enough that no one would recognize the truth. They went to the grocery store, attended neighborhood barbecues, made small talk with people who had no idea they were talking to former criminals who dismantled international criminal networks. It should have been peaceful, a reward for their cooperation. Instead, it felt like slow suffocation. 6 months into their new life, Ophelia found Dante sitting in their backyard at 3 in the morning, staring at nothing. "Can't sleep. Never can anymore. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone to find us, to finish what that shooter started." Ophelia sat beside him. "Victoria says we're safe. The protection program has never had a breach. There's always a first time." They were quiet for a while. Then Dante said, "Do you regret it? All of it? Starting with that first therapy session?" Ophelia thought about the question seriously. Did she regret falling in love with a criminal? Becoming complicit in his world? Losing her career, her country, her identity? "I regret the people who got hurt because of choices I made. Maya's trauma, the lives destroyed by operations I helped run. The moral compromises I made. She took his hand. But I don't regret you. Us. Even knowing everything it cost. That's probably not healthy. Nothing about us has ever been healthy. Why start now? Dante pulled her close. I love you. More than I've loved anything. More than my empire, my freedom, my life. You're the only thing that's ever truly mattered. I love you too, even though loving you destroyed me and remade me into someone I barely recognize. Is that a bad thing? Being someone different? I don't know yet. Ask me in another decade. They sat in the darkness, two people bound by love and shared trauma, trying to build something resembling peace from the ruins of their choices. It wasn't redemption. They'd never be redeemed. It wasn't even quite forgiveness. They both carried too much guilt for that. But it was something. A chance to try again. To be different, if not better. To maybe, possibly, find some measure of peace in the quiet life they'd been given. 1 year after entering witness protection, Ophelia sat at her desk, finishing the final chapter of her novel. The protagonist, a therapist who falls for a dangerous patient, faces an impossible choice at the end: stay with the man she loves and lose herself completely, or leave and lose the only person who truly sees her. Ophelia had written 3 different endings. In one, the protagonist leaves and rebuilds her life alone. In another, she stays and embraces the darkness. In the third, the most ambiguous, she simply walks away into the unknown, the reader left uncertain what choice she'll make. She chose the third ending, because that was closest to the truth. Every day, she and Dante made the choice to stay. But every day, they could also choose to leave. That uncertainty, that daily recommitment, was what kept them honest, kept them from taking each other for granted, kept them alive in more than just the physical sense. How's the book? Dante asked, appearing with coffee for both of them. Done. Finally. What did you decide? Does she stay or go? She walks away, but you never find out where. Maybe toward him, maybe away. The reader gets to decide. That's a cop-out. People want definitive endings. People don't always get what they want. Sometimes the most honest answer is, I don't know yet. Dante smiled. Spoken like someone who's lived in gray areas. Learned from the best. They sat together in their Oregon home, 2 people who'd traveled from New York to Montenegro to the Seychelles, and finally here, carrying the weight of everything they'd done. Outside, rain pattered against the windows. Inside, they had coffee and each other and the fragile peace they'd built from betrayal and blood. It wasn't the ending either of them had imagined, but it was honest, real, entirely theirs. And for now, in this moment, it was enough. Epilogue, 3 years later. Ophelia stood in a bookstore in Portland watching people browse copies of her novel, now a bestseller, critically acclaimed for its unflinching examination of moral ambiguity and destructive love. If they only knew how much of it was real. A woman approached her, late 50s, professional, vaguely familiar. Dr. Sinclair? Or should I say, Olivia Collins? Ophelia's blood ran cold. Only one person would make that connection. Agent Cross. Former Agent Cross. I retired last year. Victoria gestured to a quiet corner. Can we talk? They sat in the cafe section, 2 women whose lives had been irrevocably entangled by circumstance. I read your book, Victoria said. Recognized a lot of it. You disguise the details well, but I know the truth underneath. Are you here to arrest me for violating witness protection protocols? No, I'm here to tell you that the last of the appeals were exhausted last month. Everyone you testified against is now serving their sentences. The trafficking rings have been dismantled. You and Dante. Sorry, David. You're truly free now. Ophelia felt something unclench in her chest. Free. Free as you'll ever be. The people who wanted you dead are in prison or dead themselves. You can stop looking over your shoulder. What about you? Why did you really retire? Victoria smiled sadly. Because I realized I'd become as morally compromised as the people I was chasing. Using you as informants, making deals with criminals, justifying everything as the greater good. I needed to step back before I became something I couldn't live with. Do you regret it? Working with us? I regret a lot of things, but the results speak for themselves. Dozens of traffickers in prison, operations shut down, lives saved. If working with you two was the price for that, I can live with it. That's all any of us can do. Live with our choices. Victoria stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I think you did love him. Really loved him. Not trauma bonding or Stockholm syndrome. Real, complicated, messy love. That doesn't make it right, but it makes it honest. After Victoria left, Ophelia sat alone with her thoughts. That evening, she returned to their home to find Dante, David, in the garden, planting tomatoes. Such a domestic scene, such a stark contrast to the man who'd once commanded a criminal empire. Victoria found me today, she said. He tensed. And it's over. Really over. Everyone's in prison. No more contracts, no more threats. We're actually free. Dante set down his trowel, dirt on his hands, something like hope in his eyes. What do we do with freedom, after spending so long looking over our shoulders? I guess we learn to live. Really live. Not just survive. Can we do that? After everything? Ophelia thought about all they'd been through. The lies, the violence, the moral compromises, the love that had sustained them through it all. I don't know, but I want to try. Together? Always together? They stood in their garden as the sun set over the Oregon hills, two people who'd walked through hell and somehow emerged on the other side. Not unscathed, never unscathed, but alive, together, free. It wasn't redemption, but maybe, just